Have you noticed your snake plant doing something strange? Instead of growing straight up, the leaves are starting to lean to one side, twist away from the center, or spread outward like they're trying to escape the pot. Don't straighten them just yet, because here's what most people don't realize. A snake plant growing sideways doesn't always mean something is wrong with the plant. Sometimes the plant is simply responding to something in its environment. And if you keep forcing those leaves back into place without understanding the reason, you may be treating the symptom instead of the cause.
There are 5 main reasons this happens, and the third one is especially interesting because it can make a perfectly healthy snake plant look like it's struggling. So let's figure out what's really happening before you grab a stake, move the plant, or start changing its watering routine.
What does growing sideways actually mean? First, let's clarify something. A snake plant doesn't always grow perfectly vertical. Individual leaves can naturally angle outward as they mature, and older leaves may gradually spread as the plant becomes larger. That's normal. The problem is when you notice a clear change. New leaves repeatedly leaning in the same direction, the entire plant tilting toward one side, or several leaves suddenly growing away from the center. That pattern is telling you something. And unlike a leaf that's simply falling over, sideways growth can develop slowly. You might not notice it at first. 1 week, the plant looks normal. A few weeks later, you realize almost the entire plant is pointing toward the same part of the room. So let's look at the 5 most likely reasons. Cause number 1, too much water. Cause number 1 is too much water. Now, this may seem strange because overwatering is usually associated with yellow leaves, soft tissue, or root rot. But when the roots are stressed, the plant can also lose the strength and stability needed to support its leaves properly. If the soil stays wet for long periods, the roots don't get the dry, oxygen-rich conditions they need. Over time, damaged roots may struggle to supply the plant properly, and the leaves can become weaker at the base. Look closely. If the leaves growing sideways are also soft, unusually flexible, yellowing, or showing discoloration near the soil line, don't assume the problem is simply the direction of growth. Check the soil. If it's still wet days after watering, especially if the pot has poor drainage, that's a major clue. And here's the important distinction. A healthy snake plant can lean because of its growth pattern. A stressed snake plant often gives you other warning signs at the same time. So don't diagnose sideways growth from the angle of the leaves alone. Look at the whole plant. Cause number 2 is not enough light. And this is one of the most common reasons a snake plant starts leaning in one direction. Your plant doesn't understand that you want it to grow straight. It responds to light. If most of the useful light in the room is coming from one window, the leaves may gradually orient themselves toward that brighter area. Over time, the entire plant can begin leaning in the same direction. You may see this especially clearly when the plant is placed several feet away from a window, inside a darker corner, or behind furniture. Here's a simple test. Look at your plant from above. Now, look at the direction its leaves are pointing. Then look at where the strongest light is coming from. If those 2 directions match, you may have just found your answer. The plant isn't necessarily sick. It's reaching. And there's another clue. New growth is often the best indicator. Older leaves won't suddenly change direction. But if the newest leaves consistently develop toward the same light source, your plant is telling you exactly what it's responding to. Cause number 3, root problems. Now, before we move on, remember I told you the third cause was going to be interesting? Here it is. Roots. This is one of the most counterintuitive causes because you may be staring at perfectly green leaves while the real problem is happening underneath the soil. If the roots are severely crowded, damaged, or beginning to rot, the plant may become less stable and less capable of supporting balanced growth. Look for clues. Does the plant wobble easily in the pot? Does it seem loose at the base? Is the soil staying wet for unusually long periods? Are several leaves behaving strangely rather than just one? Those details matter. A plant with healthy roots usually has a solid connection between the leaves, the crown, and the root system. But if something is wrong underneath, the plant can gradually lose that stability. And here's the part many people miss. Sideways growth doesn't always begin with a leaf problem. Sometimes the leaves are simply the first thing you notice. The real issue may have started much earlier, below the surface.
Cause number 4 is much simpler. Your snake plant may simply be top-heavy. And this is where things get interesting, because your plant may be completely healthy. As snake plants mature, they can produce tall, heavy leaves from a relatively compact base. If several leaves become particularly tall, or the container is light and unstable, gravity starts pulling everything outward. You may notice that the leaves are firm, green, and healthy. There is no mushy base, there is no obvious root problem. The soil looks normal, but the plant keeps leaning. That's a completely different situation. You're not dealing with a sick plant. You're dealing with a plant whose structure has changed. Sometimes the simplest explanation is that the leaves have simply become too large for the current setup. And if the container is narrow, lightweight, or unstable, the plant has fewer chances of maintaining that upright shape. In this case, the solution isn't more water, more fertilizer, or more complicated care. It's stability. Cause number 5. Natural leaf aging or physical damage. Sometimes one leaf starts growing or leaning sideways simply because it has been damaged. Maybe it was bumped while moving the plant. Maybe furniture pressed against it. Maybe a pet brushed past it. Or maybe the leaf is simply older than the others. A damaged leaf may gradually lose its original shape and begin leaning outward. The key here is the pattern. If it's just one leaf and everything around it looks completely normal, don't immediately assume there's a major problem. Look at the rest of the plant. Are the other leaves firm? Is new growth appearing? Does the base feel healthy? Is the plant receiving adequate light? If the answer is yes, that one sideways leaf may simply be an isolated issue. And sometimes that's all it is. How to find the real cause. So now you have 5 possible causes, but how do you know which one is actually affecting your snake plant? Don't guess. Check these 3 things. First, look at the direction of the light. Where is the brightest part of the room? And are the newest leaves growing toward it? Second, check the base in the soil. Is the leaf firm where it meets the soil? Is the soil dry, or is it staying wet for a long time? Third, look at the plant's stability. Does the entire plant feel firmly anchored, or does it wobble easily in the pot? These 3 observations can tell you a lot before you change anything. And notice something important. You don't need to immediately repot the plant, change the soil, add fertilizer, or start watering differently. First, diagnose, then act. Because the right solution depends entirely on why your snake plant is growing sideways in the first place. How to fix it. Once you know the cause, the fix becomes much easier. If the problem is low light, gradually move the plant toward a brighter location. Give it more usable light, but avoid suddenly exposing a plant that's been in deep shade to intense direct sunlight. If the problem is overwatering, allow the soil to dry thoroughly before watering again. If you discover actual root rot, remove the damaged roots and repot into fresh, well-draining soil in a container with drainage. If the plant is top-heavy, improve its stability. A heavier pot can lower the center of gravity, and repotting may help if the current container is genuinely too small or unstable. If the problem is physical damage, remove the damaged leaf if necessary with a clean tool. And if the leaves are simply responding to the direction of the light, don't try to force them straight overnight. Give the plant time. New growth is what you want to watch. The existing leaves may keep their original shape, but healthier new growth can gradually give the plant a more balanced appearance. How to prevent it from happening again? To keep your snake plant growing more evenly, give it consistent light. Rotate the pot occasionally so one side isn't constantly facing the window, and avoid keeping the soil wet for long periods. Use a container with drainage, and make sure the plant is stable and properly supported by its pot. Most importantly, don't try to correct every sideways leaf the moment you notice it. Some sideways growth is completely normal. What matters is a change in pattern. If new leaves repeatedly lean in one direction, that's when you should investigate the light, the roots, the watering, and the stability of the plant. Learn to read the pattern instead of fighting the leaf. If your snake plant was growing sideways because of light, water, roots, or simply its own weight, now you know what to look for. But there's one more strange behavior you should know about. Because sometimes the leaves aren't falling over, and they're not growing sideways.
They're doing something else entirely, and that can be an even bigger clue about what's happening inside the plant. I'll show you exactly what that means in the next video. So before you cut, tie, or force another leaf into position, wait.